Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.
Dobar dan. That means good day. Podcast PDX on the web, podcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, May 10th today, 2022. Name of the show is The Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich. Welcome. Episode number 60 today, 60. I'm going to call it It's Alive. Talktest PDX sponsored by Office Furniture Direct. Anything office furniture or office related, big showroom, low prices, delivery, that kind of thing. Go visit them on the web, Office Furniture Direct at ofdpdx.com. We did this thing, it's, days of the year, like what's today? And today is Clean Up Your Room Day, which is part of World Cocktail Week. So that's always fun. Day before yesterday was May 8th. And that was when the Western nations still do in Europe, but America used to celebrate VE Day, Victory in Europe, the defeat of the Nazis in 1945. The Eastern countries used to, or still do, celebrate Victory in Europe Day on May 9th. And today is May 10th. And in 70 AD, on May 10th, Titus, then operating as the co-emperor with his father Vespasian, attacked Jerusalem, started the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD. By 74 AD, the last of the Jewish resistance was backed up into Masada, and they started the siege of Masada, and then took Masada in 74 AD, after which time there was no place in the world ruled by Jews for over 19 centuries. So that's what happened in the ancient world. I don't know if you watched it, but on Saturday, the 7th, was the Kentucky Derby. And a horse called Rich Strike won. The horse was like an alternate. It was only put in the race like 30 minutes, before the race started because of some cancellation. He was in gate number 21, which is a huge field. So this horse, it broke dead last. It ran the first half of the race, all the way in the back, one of the last three trailers. And then in the last half of the race, the jockey drove him like a racehorse, like around this horse, up this lane, around that horse. And he won the race. It was one of the better races of the Kentucky Derby since Secretariat in 72, 74, whenever that was. I can't remember. But if you haven't watched it, just go to YouTube and type in Kentucky Derby 2002 and watch the NBC coverage. If you like horse races, it was a very, very good race. When I do these shows, I sit here and go through the press and I just look for things and, check out other blogs and other shows. And I just got to tell you, everything is Roe v. Wade. Just Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade. And huge debate, and a lot of people are getting like real emotional about it, and they're telling me things like, it should be a state issue or it should be a federal issue, and they present all these statistics that are totally off point, and just talking about it, and then you got these guys that are saying it's a battle, of good versus evil, and I just don't understand, I think it's the only two options for that many people to cross the southern border, right? What? What now? Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Anyway, found a dog for me. Got to have a dog. I think that's my problem. I don't have a dog. If you could put up graph number 1. Found a dog. I think he's about as smart as I am. Good disposition. This is Ben. And Ben is a boxer. And as you can see, Ben is a handsome dog. And he lives on a country club down in, I can't remember where, I think Missouri or somewhere like that. And he was not feeling well. And he was losing weight. And his owner took him into the veterinarian. And they removed 16 golf balls from his stomach. So that's Ben. You can take that down. But that's the kind of dog I need, I think. About as smart as me, you know. You put up graph number 2. Take down 1, put up 2. This is interesting. This is Lake Mead. Lake Mead is the area behind the Hoover Dam down there by Las Vegas. You can see in the picture. Oh, this is courtesy of the Las Vegas Sun newspaper. This collage of pictures, but the picture down in the bottom right shows you the normal level of the lake, which is about 160 to 190 feet, depending. You know, I think right now it's at 170 feet roughly below where it usually is. And as you can see, the other 2 pictures, they're finding barrels with dead bodies in them. Most of them from the late 60s or 70s. You know, they say they can tell by the type of shoes that are in there and that kind of thing. And the police aren't sure, but they think that it might be mob related. But they're finding all kinds of stuff at the bottom of Lake Mead, but a very serious water shortage. You can take that one down. It's interesting, back about at the same time, there was a comedian called Buddy Hackett, and he did a movie called The Love Bug, I think was his most famous movie, but he was a good, personable character, you know, one of the old-time comedians, you know, him and Shecky Green and all those guys. And he was on the Johnny Carson show, and they were talking about Las Vegas in the 60s and 70s. And somebody brought up Frank Sinatra. And he goes, Frank Sinatra saved my life, you know, with 3 words. Frank Sinatra saved my life. And Carson told him to tell the story. He says, well, I was in Vegas. He says, and I was coming out of this hotel. And he said, you know, I was coming out of this hotel, and all of a sudden I got surrounded by a bunch of guys. And, you know, they started to beat me, and I thought they were going to kill me. And he said, just then Frank Sinatra walked out, and he said, he saved my life with 3 words. He said, that's enough, boys. So... which was very funny when he did it. It's interesting. I went and looked for it. You can't find that clip anymore. They took it down probably because it's at the request of Mr. Sinatra's estate, no doubt, or something of that nature. But you can't find it, or I couldn't find it. But he did that live on TV, and that's how we used to live. I'm part of TalkCast PDX. We broadcast over YouTube. Medical information is censored on YouTube, owned by Google, Twitter, Facebook, all your major platforms. And it seems kind of haphazard, but it's not. I was thinking about this, and I had kind of a aha moment. It's interesting. On this show, we do a lot of market stuff, and you know, years ago, when they first came up with the discipline, Adam Smith and all those guys were what's referred to as political economists, because the original idea was you could not separate the politics from the economy, and that you had to study both as a piece. And if you studied either politics, what we call political science, or economics without the other discipline, that you would come to erroneous conclusions. And I think that that's proved correct in this discipline. We have the same thing going on in medicine, in that they separated the disciplines of virology and immunology. And it's interesting. I called the episode It's Alive. I remember probably, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, something, visiting Seattle and staying at the Olympic Hotel. I was with my wife, and we were watching. We don't have a TV, or didn't watch one. If we had it at the time, I don't remember. But we were watching Animal Planet in the TV hotel room. And they had a segment about these little crabs that used to exist on the ocean floor, and they would come out at night, and then during the day, they would bury themselves under the sand. And then they showed this fish that looked like a catfish, except for it wasn't, and its whiskers kind of came out to the front like this. And it turns out that if the crab didn't bury itself sufficiently deeply, that this fish, the whiskers on its face, could detect the electrical signal from its heartbeat and then dig him up and eat him. And my wife looked at that and said, that was fun to watch. Reminds me of what a fucked place the world is what she said. And it's interesting because if you think about that in a broader context, everything that's alive eats something else, right? Bacteria and viruses in particular, they don't have brains, they don't have spinal cords, but they eat whatever they can. And their evolutionary strategy, they're so small, they replicate in such large numbers that their evolutionary strategy is simply to try every combination. They get into a host, they start to replicate, they mutate, they try every available combination, see what works best, and that's how they survive. And it's interesting. It's kind of like the philosophical root of being a vegan. You don't want to eat larger animals or mammals or something, and you're trying not to participate, if you will, in that element of the world. But if you look at that, that everything that's alive, even plants, plants eat minerals and water from the soil and carbon dioxide from the air, but everything eats something else, and is always on this food quest. And if you remember that, bacteria and particularly viruses, their strategy is just to try every available mutation. It's just what they do. You come to a disagreement on the best course of action for what you should do about any viral or bacterial infection. And they censored pretty much everybody with the one viewpoint, that everything on the earth is always looking for food. And if you do this, then this virus that is trying every combination is going to do that, and so on. And they censored that entire viewpoint. And if you look at it like that, the aim of the censorship is broader. They dream about things that are possible but have never happened before, and they conclude that the reason that they have never happened before is not everybody is on the same page. We're not all trying for the same goal. We don't all believe in the same thing, and they're trying to create that environment, and they're doing it in a variety of ways. And it depends, if viruses do try every available mutation, they may have made an error. Interesting. War in Russia, or Ukraine, more precisely. U.S. High Command, as it were, the Pentagon, came out and said that they have only, made some very small gains in the Donbass. And they said because of several factors. And they listed about 4. One of them was ability to resupply. One of them is that the troops will not advance significantly ahead of their artillery coverage. And the third is that they're stuck on the paved roads because of the mud. But I repeat myself, I've said that numerous times, that Ukraine is a swamp and Belarus is a swamp. And they're the preferred invasion routes, but the mud is literally eyes deep, 6-8 feet deep. And you have to wait until the middle of June before open field maneuver becomes possible. So in between now and the middle of June, that thing is just going to be relatively stagnant, but it's not going to stay that way. So, be prepared for that middle of summer. Ruble hit a 2-year high against the dollar. In the Western press, they say it's because of the sanctions, people paying in rubles and the Russians paying off their bonds. If you listen to the Soviet side, they say that the Soviet people, for their part, have been providing different banking incentives to the population to make them hold rubles instead of other currencies, and that had a large portion to do with it, not reported in our press. Doubt if we even know about it. Bunch of studies came out, and they were talking about lobbying of Congress to Congress, and they were showing the correlation in between these stock trades by congressmen and the amount of lobbying that is done by these corporations and the amount of federal revenue received by these corporations and the amount of lobbying and political donations done by these companies. And the correlations are very impressive, above 60%, 70% in some cases. And the major companies involved, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, et cetera. Lockheed Martin, United Health, your participation from defense and medical industry, but predominantly just these high-tech concerns. Microsoft and Amazon in particular, if not a majority, a very substantial portion of their revenue is from the government. Stock prices going through the roof. Lots of trades by Paul Pelosi and other congressmen. Put up graph number 3, please. That doesn't really concern us, but inflation does. And this is a Gallup survey that they did. And there you have it. They broke it down by income group, less than $40,000 a year per person. So if you have a household with 2 people working in it, you're 80, but 40 to 99,000 and $100,000 and over. And then they took the percentages from 2021 to 2022 to look at the change over the year, and who's worried about maintaining their standard of living. And it's always been a majority. In 2021, it was 56, 46, and 32% respectively, but it gained 17 points in the poorest category, 6 points in the middle category, and 4 points in the higher category. And then you have not enough money to pay monthly bills. Again, majorities in the lower income, 51% in 2021, 66% in 2022. Paying rent, mortgage, or other housing costs went from a small minority, 47%, to 59%, which is a 12% move in that category. It's the only category where it's not the only category, but the rich also have a problem with that, from 7 to 15%, still a small minority, but a big increase, 8 points. And then maintaining minimum credit payment on credit cards and not having enough money for retirement and paying medical bills. And again, this was a Gallup survey. You can take that down. And broad, numbers of people that they surveyed, paid for survey, everything else. What they're going to use that information for, this is for campaign information. All right. They're just trying to figure out what people are worried about so that they can somehow tie that back into a script or a narrative that says, vote for me. And this is one of the baseline studies. So as these guys do their campaign rhetoric, all lies, right? Remember, the only thing they're good at is printing money and lying. That's the issues that they're going to address. and talk to you about how, among other things, but maintaining standard of living, not having enough money to pay monthly bills, paying rent or mortgage, making minimum payments on credit cards, having enough money for retirement, and paying medical costs. And that's what that survey was all about. In Europe, the EU is still pushing to try and get all the member states to not, disavow Russian oil and gas. Another Ben, arguably smarter than the dog, this guy's name is Ben van Beurden, and he's the chief executive officer of Shell Corporation, which is the biggest oil company in Europe. And, he listened to the EU's speech about how they're going to import natural gas and all the rest of this stuff. And he said, quote, bringing more LNG is liquefied natural gas, quote, bringing more LNG to the market, increasing liquefaction and regasification capacity, and rising pipeline supplies from North Africa and Norway are reasonable things. But there is no way to simply buy more pipeline gas and LNG to completely replace all the Russian gas that we currently consume. This is not feasible, end quote. But they're still pushing for it. If only we could get enough people to do this and do that, we can achieve these goals, even though they're impossible, by anybody that can count. There's a shortage of infant formula in the United States. And apparently it's causing inconvenience is too light a word. But for babies that have dietary problems, I don't know why a baby would have a dietary problem, a restricted diet, if you will. They can't get their formula, and that's kind of a problem. And it turns out that most of the formula that you buy, irrespective of the brand, is made by Abbott Laboratories. Same corporation makes pretty much all of it in the United States anyway. And they had to recall the entire stock of 3 different brands because of a bacterial infection in the manufacturing facility. And so that's apparently causing a lot of problems and will continue to cause problems for a while until they can get the plant sanitized and back up. They polled German companies again, talking to them about Russian gas. 13.8% of them said that substitution of Russian gas and oil was not possible at all. Another 16.3% said that it is not economically viable. And another 43.4% said that they could do it, but, it's only partially possible, depending on price. And only 13.8% said that, yeah, they could do that, no problem. And yet the government, particularly the EU, is pushing every country to try and do this. Turkey, nation of Turkey. It's important. Erdogan, the president, he wants to take territory out of Syria because they have oil and gas, so that he can use the oil and gas. He's an expansionist guy, member of NATO. But anyway, it's a key pivotal country. Eventually, they'll have to withdraw from NATO. And when that happens, that'll be key. But consumer prices in Turkey are up 70% for a year. Month-over-month increases about 7.5%. Food prices have risen 90% since last year. Cost of transportation's up 106% since last year. And inflation for the year, the way they measure it, came in at 52% for the year. And the country imports 93% of its oil and 99% of its gas, which is where you get to wanting to invade Syria, northern Syria, what they call the Kurdish regions, for their oil and gas. And that kind of brings us to what's happening here in our markets. Our policies are terrible. We're ruled by the same people as everybody else. If only we all believe we can do this. It's kind of Maoist, in its, Mao did the same thing in China in the 50s. everybody on the same page, everybody not on the same page to re-education camps. And if we all just believe this and do this, anything is possible. And it's causing problems because they can't do arithmetic. How many barrels of oil do we use? Well, how many do we, they're incapable. They're ideologues. And causing problems shows up in the inflation rate. The historical method for knocking down inflation is to raise interest rates past higher than the inflation rate. In 1980, Paul Volcker, the then chairman of the Federal Reserve, first hiked them to 11. Then inflation continued to spike, and by the time he was done, you could take money to a bank and get 20% on a certificate of deposit, 20% interest rate, to knock out the inflation of the early 80s because of the magnitude of the debt from trying to spread democracy and freedom to the Middle East and now Ukraine and all the rest of the things they do. We can't raise interest rates. So their only other option is to raise interest rates as much as they can and make equities worth less. Equities would be, stock market, real estate, in principle, your two largest markets. But that's the only thing they can do. If you can put up graph number 4, this is just our market graph from September 30th, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. What's important is the right-hand tail of the graph. We hit a low on Friday, April 29th of 41.32. Then the following Friday, May 6th, we hit another low of 41.23, slightly lower. And then yesterday, market fell quite a bit, and we closed at 39.91. This morning, when the market opened, it was up 1.5%. Nobody bought the rally. When I looked at it, call it 15 minutes ago, it was flat. And right now it is down 0.2%, so still flat. It's 39.83 compared to 39.91. The point being that the thing keeps making new lows and nobody bought the rally this morning. Now, the rally this morning was probably engineered by the Fed. If it's holding its ground, which it is currently, they're in there buying it. They have to close it up a little bit by the end of the day. So I would, if I was a trader, I would be buying midday and selling at the close, intraday trades. You can take that one down and put up number 5. And this is just a little bit of broader context here. This graph goes from January 2nd, 2018 to June 30th, 2022. The thing to notice about it is the big dip in the middle and then the steady ramp in the channel on the way up, after that, and that was the pandemic premium. And turns out correlates to inflation. They have to break the inflation. You can see that the market's having difficulty. If it were a free market, in other words, there was no outside influence, just a mix of buyers and sellers, investors, and so on, the thing would fall below 3,000 points. But that's not the case, because they, as I talked about for ages on this show, they destroyed the bond market, forced everybody into equities. So all your retirement money is in equities. Everybody's in equities. So they have to defend. That's the argument. I think they have to defend in between 3,400 and 3,600 points. So call it 3,500 points. Other people disagree with me and say that they could overshoot to 3,000. Other people disagree with all of us and say that they won't let it go below 4,000 or call it 3,900, in other words, that they have to support here. The last point yesterday we closed at 39.91, and if you look at the last time that happened, it was March 31st, so the end of the first quarter 2021. So about a year's worth of gains have been evaporated. It only has to fall another 140 points for it to be to lose all the gains since the inauguration of Joe Biden. And I anticipate that for political and other reasons, there's a bunch of people that will try and make that happen. If it falls to 3,500, that's another 12% drop from where it is right now, which is about 15% off of its high that it set back on January 3rd. You can take that down. As I keep saying, I don't see anything until closer to the election to move it. Their policies of, if we're all on the same, they can't add. They can't add. They couldn't balance a checkbook. They're that bad. You sit there and tell them, well, we can't do that because we can't get the 1 million tons of nitric acid, and it's in one ear, out the other. It just doesn't register. Well, we'll figure it out. Well, without the nitric acid, no, you won't. Speaking of, taking it back to fertilizer, and they just don't listen. They're ideologically motivated. All they know how to do is print money, and they caused a bunch of problems that printing money can't fix. I went into the store. I went into the store to buy crackers yesterday. Went to 3 different stores, no crackers. Of the kind that I wanted. And the kind that I wanted were just yeast, water, and salt, right? That's it. I don't like all the flavors and all the rest of this. And there are none. At 3 different supermarkets, right? And it's they're causing a bunch of problems that lying about it and printing money can't solve. Baby formula, pissing a lot of people off. And I didn't buy the rally this morning. I still think the Fed has to close it up a little bit or be embarrassed, so they will. If we go to last week, the markets, I already showed you, what did they, the week prior, they hit a low of 41.32, and then last week they hit a low of 41.23, so a giant 9 points, 8.6 points. So the market was basically flat. In our 3 demonstration portfolios, top 30 cap weighted, you would have lost $1,000 instead of being basically flat, or $210. In the top 30 equal weight, you would have lost $500 instead of only $200. And in the top 3, every sector, a little broader sector, including the energy companies and the industrials in particular, you would have made $500 instead of losing $200. 54 stocks. And this is just for last week, Monday through Friday. 5 stocks went up more than 5%. Listen to this. ConocoPhillips, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Kinder Morgan and AT&T. For the 5, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Kinder Morgan are all... Kinder Morgan is a pipeline company. The other 3 are oil producers. ConocoPhillips up 12.75%. Chevron up 9%, ExxonMobil up 7.6%, Kinder Morgan up 6.3%, and AT&T, just because it's been beaten so badly, so down in trading, was up 6.2%. And, so your energy sector did really well. 5 stocks went up more than 3%, but less than 5%. Bank America, Broadcom, Verizon Communications, so your comm stocks. 3M and JP Morgan, in between 2 and 5%. The biggest winner in there was Bank America, up almost 5%. Lowest one was JP Morgan, which was only up 3.7%. So, but in other words, energy and banking for last week were the only sectors that did very well. 7 stocks up more than 1%, but less than 2%. NextEra Energy, solar companies, Southern Company, railroads, Facebook, Intel, Google, one of the real estate concerns, another utility, Duke Energy, all up in between 1 and call it 1.6%. Then you had 7 companies that were up, but less than 1%. Honeywell and other real estate companies, Cisco, NVIDIA, Comcast, Coca-Cola, and Boeing Aircraft was flat, up 0.04%. And then 5 companies that went down, but less than 1%, Boeing Aircraft, UPS, Pfizer, Apple, Sherwin-Williams, Tesla. 11 companies that went down more than 1, but less than 2. And this is where most of them are, are big caps. Microsoft is in there. Philip Morris is in there. Abbott, Disney, Berkshire Hathaway, Adobe, Target, United Health. That's it. Home Depot and, 5 stocks that went down more than 2, but less than 3. Home Depot, Walmart, Johnson & Johnson. So purveyors of things that people use. Lowe's, purveyor of things that people use. 4 stocks went down more than 3%, but less, actually more than 4%, but less than 6%. And that would be MasterCard and Visa, both your credit clearing concerns on decreased activity. Netflix down another 5%, Costco down 5.3%. And then 5 stocks that fell more than 7%. And that would be PayPal. We already talked about that exhaustively on bad management. Amazon still reeling from earnings, down 6.5%. S&P Global missed earnings. The estimates were $3. They came in at $2.89. So their stock fell 8.2%. Nike, remember that pivot? What's good for China is good for Nike, and what's good for Nike is good for China. As China does these terribly restrictive lockdowns and stuff, Nike's stock fell 8.2%. And Prologis, one of the real estate concerns, I have a note here. What do I say? Oh, interest rate contracts. In other words, derivative obligations, they messed up, but their stock was down 12.1%. And so for the week, a little bit flat, but hit a new low. The important thing, it closed at a new low on Friday. What were the dates? On Friday, April 29th, and on Friday, May 6th, new lows. We'll see what it does by this Friday. Anyway, you all know my opinions. Been the Bogdanich Perspective, Tuesdays. Thank you for joining. See you next Tuesday. And Do Vidjenia means goodbye.
Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.